Well, since I'm holding it, I'll start out. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out in the rain. Wow, did anybody get rained on? Oh. Well, they say, when you start a journey, when you start a journey in the rain, the journey is going to be really good.
It's really wet. Yeah.
So we're in good shape. And, I'll start out with my stress and anxiety 20 minutes ago. What did I tell you, Peggy? I'm looking on the schedule to see where I'm going to go, and I see my name. I'm going to be in Betty Dorm with Peggy doing stress and anxiety, so I guess I need a little stress and anxiety to start off with. I mean, oh my gosh. Good thing I was dressed still from the morning session. You never know, right? You just never know what's going to happen. But it brings some laughs when we're taken aback, or it can bring a lot of stress and anxiety. And pre-principles, that would have thrown me for a loop. We can't know for sure, but having a sense of who I was before I got wind of the principles back in 1985, and I knew nothing back then. What I knew, you could put in a thimble. So hang in there wherever you are in your exploration, in your uncovering, because it just gets better. And I'm not going to say much before I hand it over to Peggy, and we're going to go back and forth. And we, like everybody is doing, we really want to have this be very interactive. So whenever you have a question, I'm going to run up and give you this microphone, and this is my private microphone that goes into my device for my hearing. And that was something, that would have thrown me for a loop, I'm pretty sure, to lose hearing. It wasn't really suddenly, but pretty quickly from age 45. Boom, 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 boom. Totally unexpected. They told me it was genetic. And I had to think, who in my family had hearing loss? My father at age 70 something. So that can't be me. So when they said, well, here's a booklet, when you need a hearing aid, you'll know how to choose. And I'm thinking, I'm 45, my father was in his 70s, so I walked out of the outside, the office door, and then out of the building door, and I see a wastebasket. And what do you think I did with the booklet? In the next year, I did my first hearing aids. So life is a mystery. You just never know what's going to show up. And I can tell you, from my personal experience, which reminds me to say that anything I say during this hour, or if we meet out there, don't take what I say as true for you. You just listen to all of these sessions very simply, quietly, and you don't know what's going to stick. You don't know what's going to show up for you. So it's, Sid was right on when he said it's not in the words, it's what you're hearing. And, it's neat to see head shaking, because you don't know that until you experience it. And that's true for everything that either of us are going to talk about. You're not going to know anything until you have the experience. And that's what happened. I would have this experience and I would say, oh my God, that must be what Sid meant when he said, here's one of my favorite quotes. When the blind shall see and the deaf shall hear. So that fits me really well. So I'm going to hand it over to Peggy, and we'll see what's up here.
Hi everybody, I've met quite a few of you over the weekends, and today, round about an hour ago, I was sitting down with my group. We're on a little retreat ourselves in our villa, drinking coffee, thinking, oh, there's a flood warning, so I won't have to go. And so I rang Jenny up and said, Jenny, do us a favour, I can't get hold of Sheila. And I was like, all happy, relaxed, and I just kept thinking, the anxiety that I was experiencing was that my son was trapped in a bar with a lot of people, and he was safe, but I was going, oh, I wish he was here, that's the only thing that's missing. That was my little minute of anxiety. And then I got really excited thinking, oh, I don't have to go tonight. I could just have drinks and enjoy myself at the villa. And then I rang Jenny, and then Sheila rang me back and said, you come in, Peter's coming to collect you now. So I said, all right. Sorry. Yeah. And then there were too many of us in the car, but there was like a moment of, oh my God, I better quickly get changed, I'm soaking wet, and we're just sitting there in wet clothes and drinking coffee. But it's weird how it's like a roller coaster, how we go up and down and up and down. And what I found is, like Laurie, years ago, I mean about 9 years ago, I would have been like panicking over the slightest little thing that was a change. And then one day I saw something and I thought, all the worrying that I do does not make it go away. And I always use this for young people, and I'm sure a lot of you must have heard this metaphor. The clouds comes in and the sun's hidden, and then suddenly the sun comes out. It might take an hour, 10 minutes, 2 minutes for the sun to come back out, but it always does. Now, if I just keep focusing on the cloud, and oh my gosh, the anxiety will just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then suddenly the clouds will look dark and they'll look horrible, and I'll probably take to my bed. But when you know the sun's going to come out, and I think that's one of the biggest insights I had was, it always passes if you get quiet. And what happens, I see, because I work with a lot of people that suffer with stress and anxiety, depression, OCD, is that when you know, and no amount of me, Laurie, anybody in this room saying to the next person, it will pass, will make any difference. But it's like, someone said to me this afternoon in our little session, it's like a clock tick-tock in your head. And how do you stop the clock ticking? You can't stop the clock ticking until you see that it's a clock and it's not real. So when you see that it's a clock ticking, that's when you see this is thought amplified, crippling my actual reality. And that's how I see it. So when I think about anxiety, OCD, any of them, I always think of what Bill Pettit said on one of his podcasts. It's like you're having all these thoughts, you're having so much overthinking, and then suddenly the brakes are on. It's like an alarm bell telling you that what's really happening is, I need time out. I can't cope with this overthinking any longer. And that's when you see it go to a different stage. And for me, that's like, why are we so afraid of our experience? I recently had an experience with my nephew that suffered an episode of psychosis last year. And we dealt with that really terribly, he got sections, and even though we know about this understanding, at the time it was just like, this is beyond us, we can't deal with it. And then this year, he seemed to be going back into some sort of manic episode. And he rang his mum and she rang me and she said, oh, here we go again. He's saying he wants to be sectioned. And I said, tell him to come and see me. So she dropped him off. And he said, my mum's going mad, she's making me worse. And I can't deal with her. And I said, can you just go and just leave us? So she left him with me. And he said, why aren't you acting up? What's going on? And I said, you're fine. And he goes, what do you mean I'm fine? I goes, what I see is a lovely person in front of me that is okay. He said, but I'm not okay. I need to go to Springfield. I need to be sectioned. I said, you know what you need and we will deal with that. So we drove to this hospital that he goes to see his mental health nurse, forced them to give us an appointment, and he sat there and he said, she's madder than me. She thinks I'm fine. Can't you see? I'm not fine. And then the mental health nurse and the psychiatrist said to him, we think you're fine as well. He goes, oh, you're all mad. All of you. You're all crazy. And then he said, do you know what I need? I need to not, I mean, it's drug induced. And he said, I need to not take those balloons anymore. I need to stop thinking that this is going to make me happy. because it's not. So he said the one thing that stopped him having the episode was he realised that he was imagining that he was mad, and he saw something for himself. He said the calmness of everybody around him, people that haven't been introduced to the three principles, the psychiatrist and the mental health nurse, were extremely quiet. And it's the quietness that made him realise it's actually, the tick-tocking's going to stop when I see that it's going to stop. No amount of people are going to make that stop. So it's really something that we can't give you. It's something that you have to know and see for yourself. I mean, I want to open up because people might have questions about what do you do? How can you help somebody? I don't know. Laurie might have another story that she wants to tell you, but for me, it's really about the calmness. But you can't pretend that you're okay. You can't pretend to be calm. You've actually got to believe that person's okay. You've got to believe in yourself that I'm okay. And that's when that ticking will stop. Thank you.
Isn't that true, right? Pretending to be calm. And people do that innocently. They think that I can talk myself into calm, or, behavior modification, or any of the outside-in sorts of techniques that we talk about as it could help you for a short term, but what you're really looking for is that what Bill Pettit calls the awareness of love letters. He calls feelings of anxiety and stress a love letter from the universe, alerting us, letting us know, oh, I just got caught up in a whole bunch of thinking. And the temptation could be to keep thinking, but there's a part of you that knows the real medicine is to get quiet. Quiet down to the best of your ability, and just knowing that you are going to be quiet. You are going to get quiet at some point in time. Nobody stays anxious and stressed forever. May seem that way, right? But if you really look deep down, you realize there are times you're focused on something, whether it's work or a movie or whatever, and you're not doing that thinking about yourself, where you're at, how well you're doing, how anxious you are. It's all the thinking about yourself that gets in our way. So let's hear from you. What questions, ideas, what comes to you? What have you seen that relates to us?
Stick. Shall I take it?
Oh, right there. Thank you. Leah knows how to hold it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I have a question. I love that idea of a love letter, of it being, a sign. And what I struggle with, and I'm wondering if anyone else does, please raise your hand. There are certain areas of my life when the stress and anxiety, I can really kind of see it for what it is. Just a sign to you need to calm, the tasks are gonna get done, my child's gonna be okay, so on and so forth. But there's another area of my life where I can't seem to get there. I've started to take care of my elderly mom, who does not live with me, but her finances, her house, and it just seems like every time I see her calling, and I love her with all my heart, before the phone is on the second ring, my anxiety is off the roof, because it's what's gonna happen next? Why is she calling? 8 times out of 10, it's some sort of stressful situation. The 2 times out of 10, it's like, hey, just called to say hello, which is of course lovely as well. Anyone have opposite areas of their life where they can't apply this? And 2, I would love to hear your thoughts about that. How do I continue to remind myself that I don't know what is stressing me out until I answer the phone? Because it's that one area that it seems to be a blind spot for me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, here's the interesting thing about reminding ourselves, right? The interesting thing, that's a great segue into talking about, I think we all do that. We think that, maybe I have to put sticky notes on the refrigerator. And people do those sorts of things to remind themselves. Well, that doesn't work out so well, does it? Because if you're already thinking you have to remind yourself, you're thinking it's a problem. Isn't it interesting that the reminder comes from a deeper place? It's a realization, like a wake-up call. It's, oh, right, here I go again. I don't know what the next minute is going to hold, much less the next hour, day, week. But, we have this brain that loves to imagine things, and imagination can go wild. And a lot of our society thinks that when you love somebody, when you really, really love somebody, there's an element of worry involved. But is there? How does us worrying share love with our loved one? If anything, like your story about your nephew, if anything, it feels like, I don't know, you're closer to your nephew. How do you think he felt when his mom worried about him?
I think it amplified his stress. He actually felt like unsafe, and she sort of personified, I am mentally ill, I need to be sectioned. She actually encouraged it, I think, and she didn't mean to. She was just in such a stressful situation. But the funny thing is, in answer to the blind spot thing, there's always the blind spot. We all have them. One thing that I've learned personally, me, with anxiety, is that I had a problem with insomnia where I don't sleep. I'll have I can go 2 days and not sleep. And I used to fight it quite a lot. And I used to think, why do I do this? I know about the principles. I know that it's my thinking. I know that I should be okay, but I didn't sleep. And then one day I just thought, why do you just keep rattling in the bed, driving your husband mad? Why do you keep doing all these crazy things? So I just got up and I just used to just stay awake, and then I'd fall asleep. But all the time I was in my bed, overthinking it, it was just getting worse. I think my husband was just like thinking he's must divorce me or sleep somewhere else. But I then got to a point where I realised one day, it's better that I do something about this than leave it. That was my realisation. So I just used to get up, and then I'd be really extremely tired and go to sleep. And it's got better and better. And now I still have days where I don't sleep, but then I'll have a next day where I sleep 13 hours. It's crazy. I'm lucky because I'm retired, so I can do that. But with your mother, until you see that blind spot, it's difficult. But can I just ask a question? How long are you stressed before you answer the phone?
Well, second ring, probably 15, 20 seconds, and then depending on what the call is about.
And then the anxiety just rises if it's an anxious situation.
Yeah, and the spiral starts, like you said. My imagination is like, okay, she's given out her bank account information again, or she's been a victim of fraud again, or the water heater has blown again. Yeah, the imagination begins.
And you're sitting here, you look okay to me.
Yeah. And she called me.
Yeah.
She's okay.
And that's it, is we go up and down with this. This isn't something that people say, oh God, you should know better. Once you come to one of these retreats, I'm going to get peace for the rest of my life. Absolutely not. 2 minutes of peace a day, if you're lucky. If you're lucky. So that's like anybody else that wants to share something that they think, there's different situations. I've made light-hearted of the insomnia, but it was a serious problem once for me.
Yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about...
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. Thank you. It just reminded me how sometimes things fall away, and that a little bit of anxiety is normal, isn't it? And I think since I had my baby, and she just turned 2 last week, I sometimes get the thought that I'm worried if something happens to her, but I know that it's just a small thought and it goes, and I can just ignore that, and I think it's a natural part of being a new mum, that I have that thought. But I was reminded talking to someone, I was coaching them, and they were telling me they had OCD, and it reminded me back in the day when I had a little bit of OCD. It wasn't diagnosed, but you know, I was door checking, and funny enough, my twin sister had it as well, and like, who knows, there's something, both of us, we both had this door checking thing, and like one time I left my holiday early because I was worried I left the oven on, and of course I got home, it was, you know, it was in the UK anyway, so it wasn't too bad, but it wasn't on, and then I was like, oh, but I never did anything about it, and then suddenly it stopped, and so whatever it was for a period of my life where I was just a bit stirred up, and then it just went, and I didn't have to do anything about it, and maybe I'm lucky other people have it, and so you can't say what that is, but sometimes the allowing that it's quite normal that you know your mum's going to do something. When my mum broke her arm last year, then I had periods of that when the phone, we were looking at WhatsApp, and me and my sisters on a separate group were like, we haven't had a blue tick, and she hasn't been online, and she started to say, oh, well, I left the phone downstairs when I went to bed. We said, you've got to take it up because we're all looking for that blue tick, or we're looking to see when you looked at your phone. And then, of course, she realised we were worried. But, of course, that started down again, you know, so it's kind of natural. What, you know, it sounds like a natural anxiety to me rather than an unnatural one. But, I mean, it's not nice to feel, but, yeah.
But there it is.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right on. You know, if you're human, stress and anxiety is inevitable. But you don't have to overdo it. You don't have to carry it any further than, you know, a few moments. And if you do, that's okay, because the moment you realize, oh, okay, I can let it go, or it really, it's not even a decision of letting it go, it just happens, because you're not taking it so seriously. I think that's what happens, like your nephew's mom, because she takes it so seriously, it's drawn out and it affects him, and on and on. It becomes a Dean, I could do it.
Thanks. What I would also, can you hear?
Better with that, yeah, both together, one in each hand.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good.
What I'd add to that is that you have to keep in mind that when it goes away, it's something really simple, and it's the same for all of us. When it goes away, you're remembering that thought creates reality. So in the moments when we realise that thought creates reality, there cannot be any stress, there cannot be any anxiety, there cannot be any form of stress when we know that thought creates reality, because thought is no longer a problem, right? So in those moments, that's why it disappears. It doesn't magically go away. You're remembering that thought creates reality. And when you remember that, there can't be a problem with thought. There can only be a problem with thought when we temporarily forget that thought creates reality, and we can have any kind of negative state of mind. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Is that like trying to mess with shadow puppets on the wall? Is that like trying to catch a butterfly or something, because you can't capture a thought?
No, that's right. So it's like you said, it goes away by itself because you suddenly remember that thought creates reality. You're not actually thinking that, but you're remembering, and in that moment of remembering, everything else dissolves. Stress, anxiety, depression dissolves in that moment. You know, you'll all probably know this, but you know, even people in mental institutions, they have moments of pure psychological clarity. How is that possible if they really have a mental illness? Where is the mental illness when they have moments of pure clarity?
Psychosis.
Sorry?
Psychosis, we call it. When they go from mentally insane to normal life, we call it psychosis. Never heard of the word psychosis. I think it is.
Isn't it the other way around?
Probably.
Yeah, I think it might be
Could
the
be
It's
other
the
way.
other way around.
I'm not a doctor.
The psychosis when you have the
When you're
mental.
having, yeah. I was working in a hospital once, and one of the nurses said, So what about someone who's having a psychotic episode? And I said, well, what they're experiencing is exactly the same as what you're experiencing right now, because their reality is as real to them as yours is to you. Yeah, we're all experiencing whatever's going on up here, whatever we're creating. But yeah, in those moments, I'm labouring the point really, but in those moments when we remember that thought creates reality, then it's gone. We're free.
And I would say even it's gone sometimes without, you know, it leaves on its own too. It's not like you have to remember
I was gonna say
anything in
that.
particular. There's nothing to remember, there's just something to see, to realize that we're all okay. Even in moments when something dreadful is happening. It'll be taken care of. Yeah. I'll take the other one too. The double fisted. It's actually Thank you.
This is scary. Still working? Yeah?
Yes.
It's both the ones here. I was with this group of three people in people, let's call it like this, in Holland, and we were talking about maybe the wake up call or the love letters, as Bill called it, and some weeks after I was full of a lot of feeling. There was just like tsunamis going through me. I was all kinds of things, and I know now because of the three principles that I just have to wait. I don't have to understand. I just wait, and hopefully it passed. But it's still difficult. But anyway, because we were talking about these love letters, after a few weeks we came together again. And another thing I thought, it's not the problem is not the problem, but it's the thinking about the problem. So we came back together again, and the only thing that came to me was I just had they were saying, how are you? And I said, I just had a lots of love letters. And only by saying that I thought, well, that's a wonderful thing. To have loads of love letters, but normally you think, oh, if you would say I had a lot of anxiety or whatever, you would think there's a problem. But by only saying I had loads of love letters, I thought, wow, that's wonderful, isn't it? So I said the problem evaporated or something. Yeah.
We've just had our 5-minute warning. If anybody else would like to share.
Yeah. We just got the word that
Yeah.
we have to, that went fast.
A bit of a
We have a short time before
I think we were
ending,
5
so
minutes
one
late.
more question, I guess.
It's not so much a question as more an observation, really. I just wonder, you know, Leanne shared her example with her mum. I wonder whether, and you know, we can all relate to that kind of stress. I wonder whether part of it is that when something problematic hits us, rather than us really embracing it, we resist it. And the resistance to it it just feeds it and expands it. Does that resonate with anybody? Yeah. That somehow, that if we embrace it more fully, because we are so capable, then we're likelier to be able to deal with it in a even-handed, less stressful way. If that makes sense.
So you mean like you resist it because or whoever resists it is because they're afraid of it?
But possibly, I mean, resistance can take lots of different forms. You know, or this is not the right time, or I'm scared of, or it's going to be terrible. We're not embracing it. We're not internalizing it.
And you're not present because you're thinking ahead of
Yeah,
what's this
exactly.
phone call going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good point. I wish we had longer to talk about that. Such a good point. You want to say something really?
No, I just wanted to say that a lot of the time when I think of my sister calling me, it's a similar thing. Oh my God, what's one of her kids done now? And what's she going to be like? Because they both act up different times. And it's not about them. I know they're fine. And she's also fine. It's more about the anticipation of what is she going to say at the other end of the phone. But I've found that it passes so quick now. And I've actually been really upfront with her. The anxiety that you bring to the table yourself gives me a lot of thinking. I have a lot of thinking about your anxiety and the stress. And I think my nephew's told her himself, you actually make things 10 times worse. And she feels, oh, I've let you down as a parent. I said, see, there's even an extra layer that you've brought down. It's not, oh, he loves her so deeply, he doesn't want her to be anxious. And that's his thinking. So we've got,
I just wanted to respond a little
Yeah.
bit, and then can we run over a Tara? Is that okay?
Well, I mean,
Or there.
be late for the next one.
Yeah. I'll come back to the resistance for a minute.
I just wanted to add something funny to this conversation about habits, that we get into habits of worry and habits of stress and habits of, and sometimes I think for me, like, I used to be quite an anxious person. I don't have the same relationship to anxiety or stress that I used to, but I still have habits, behaviours around it. And it's funny, I was walking here and I was speaking to my 10-year-old, who's hysterical, and said, Mummy, you're not here. We're having such a stressful time because you're not taking all the stress from us. Like, you're not here to take the stress from us to get out of the house. We're getting so stressed to get out of the house because we can never get out of the house because everyone's forgetting things, going back, going forward. And you're not here to take all the stress from us. And I thought it was so funny because it really points to habits. And I was thinking about, like, I obviously have these habits that's not very healthy for my children to see, but I can't help my habits and how I behave, even though they really don't impact me in the way that they used to. It's just a habit of responding and behaving. I don't take it seriously, but it obviously comes out in my being. And it's just funny, I just thought that was helpful to bring in the thing about habits, because we all have habits and how we respond to things. And yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Absolutely, yeah, that's another beautiful point. You know, the habit of worry is very common. But it also gets dropped when people see that they're creating their experience. Like, it's not like we are prisoners of a particular habit. It looks that way. But that's not how we work. Moment to moment, we work through understanding and awareness and seeing. And we have to end, but I just want to get back to that resistance point, because something came to me about how there's a part of us that doesn't fear things. There's a part of us that is always available, that deeper part. And that's what you see in this community, you know, talking to people who have seen that. Well, Dominic's talk this morning really spoke to that deeper place, that knowing that we can depend upon. We are so used to depending upon the brain that creates worry and fear and resistance, and we get used to that. But then when you realize, wait a minute, it could happen, you know, an insight can happen, like tonight when you're going back to your room and you see something and, you know, that's beautiful. So it could happen anytime, and it's great that you're all here, that you're all curious and you're all looking for that. because that's the doorway. So thank you so much.